Now let's have a look at encoding the answers. Now this is not after you collect the data, how do you encode it, but when you're asking questions, how do you want the answer to come to you? Now, this is usually a question of, but the answers have to be converted into something that can be analysed. Frequently, your survey, your data is going to be analysed using some form of statistical techniques. Now, depending what you want to do with the information, you might need to encode the answers in different types of scale. So, that's one of the considerations. The second consideration is that you need an encoding scheme that will give you the same answer for the 100th or 200th time of asking as it did for the first one. So that's something to think of as well. And it's very easy to fall into the trap of changing your coding scheme as you learn about the survey. And if you do that, you have to discard the first lot and start again. So treat the first lot as a pilot survey. Now again, part of the kind of statistical information or the statistical test you can use on the different types of data. Just to remind you that particularly if you're coding your data using an ordinal scheme, there's limits to what you can do with it. Observations from the field, that is from experience of people who do surveys, and mostly my experience, is that you really need to know how you will analyze the data before you decide on the encoding. Alright, so you need to know where you're going to go to before you go there. Showing a relationship between ordinal information and categorical variables can be difficult. And I had a survey, a research project that I participated in. Quite a lot of it was categorical information and ordinal variables, and trying to show some relationship was just, in many ways, it was just, it was difficult and not mathematically valid. So we had all this data and thinking, what are we going to do with this? It can be troublesome. An example, comparing the performance of students from different faculties, and that is limited because a faculty is a categorical measure, not an interval or a ratio. So, I mean, how are you going to compare it? You can compare people, say, within a faculty, that's got some consistency, but between faculties, yeah, maybe not. You couldn't show a correlation between the student performance and the faculty type, but you could show student performance for each faculty. There are problems. Now, by scales, we talk about rating scales. Rating scales are a form of measurement. Now, most scales are ordinal measures. The most common of them is the Likert scale. It's Likert, not Likert, or Likert. The Likert scale is strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree, or some variation thereof. Usually the 5-point Likert scale is most common. Sometimes there's a not applicable category added, or don't know, or something of that nature. But the scale itself goes neutral in the middle and degrees of preference out the edge. It is an ordinal scale. It's not measuring the amount of something. Something that possibly could be interpreted as a continuous measure is the semantic differential scale, where you've got two ends and somebody places marks a position between those two ends. Now that is something of a ratio scale, and you could use that. A staple scale is similarly, it's a numeric scale, and people can put their preference on there. The kind of thing that overcomes an ordinal scale measure is something where you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your answer? And people can give you their answer. Now that is more of an interval measure than the Likert scale. Now, how many categorizations should you use? How many variables should you use? There have been various tests done of this, because obviously the less you have to collect, the better. Now, normally with more data points, you get more accurate information, or more confident information. But what has been shown is that after 4 items of information, the value of the next item of information drops off. So there's value in adding up to 4. I mean, 4 is a great deal better than 3, but 5 bits of information doesn't add much. So for a Likert scale, which is a 5 measure scale, it's useful. And will give you more information than a 3 scale. So agree, neutral, disagree gives you some information, but strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree gives you much more information. Taking it out 7 would give you more information, but not as much as you might think. What verbal stimuli should be used to label the scale categories? Strongly agree to disagree, that's verbal cues of what you're doing. You can use, it applies mostly to staple scales, where you've got some category and some category on the end, like it's hard or it's strong or some value statement. So the word you choose can make a difference to the scale. I guess the other question is, what should be the physical form of the scale? When you're constructing surveys, are you going to put the scale vertically or horizontally? A lot of the time a Likert scale is put horizontally. That's a bit more neutral. When you put the scale vertically, normally it's applied that the vertical dimension gives you more of something. So, subtle difference, sometimes it can matter. Now there are some common rating scales that you might like to use. The restaurant rating scale of so many hats is one. Hotels are commonly measured on star rating, with 5-star being supposedly the top. eBay sellers, we're getting many more of these recommender systems that are coming through, and there are different constructions of them. Now, eBay is a percentage approval. I think a lot of consumer reviews, particularly with the discussion, board, the forums that go along with it, they get so much percentage of people found this review to be useful, for example, and that's a scale as well. Car safety is a star rating. Appliance energy rating is a star rating. They are the common things that you can have. So how you go about it is decide how the answer should be encoded to assist analysis. If you need an interval scale, if you need an interval variable, you better use the interval scale. If you only need ordinal information, then you can use an ordinal scale. But it's more likely that the question suits an ordinal scale, and you're going to have to construct your analysis to suit the thing. So you develop your categorical sets where necessary, such as say industry codes or defect types. So if you're going to have categorical variables, and the example there being what industry is this? The Bureau of Statistics maintains a set of standard industry classification schemes. Defect types, it varies from place to place, but normally there's a set of categories about what type of defect it is. So you should develop those. You develop ordinal scales where necessary, but it's generally best to use an established scale. There is usually a great deal of information about the validity of these scales, and you would be silly to ignore it. You can go develop your own scale, and then you've got the problem of checking is it valid, which you would have to do. Where that comes in is where you're making uses a compound measure, and say a scale of learnability, or a scale of service quality, or a scale of I've forgotten exactly which one it was. I know I wanted to develop a measure of remote learning. I wanted to know how useful things like these video lectures were, and so I developed a survey to find out whether people thought they were of value to them or not. Now, to do that, I looked up all manner of research to find out where there existing scales that could be used. I didn't find a scale. I found several that could be used and adopted. One I adopted as is. I think there was about 20 questions in it. It was useful, and so I put it straight in. For others, I had to modify them. So the summary is that your data need to be analyzed. Your data needs to be encoded to facilitate analysis, and you should think about the classification of the answers. How should people answer this question? They want it in qualitative terms, they want it in numeric terms. If it's in numeric terms, is it on a scale? What sort of scale to use? Now, try to avoid numeric codes for categorical variables, because numbers imply a sequence or a ratio where none is implied. Okay, so if you are, I know that the standard industry codes, the SIC, are a classification system much like the Dewey Decimal System, and they're simply numbers. They don't imply an order or a sequence, they're simply numbers. But if you've got, say, 5 variables, you number them 1 to 5, you are implying some order to them, and possibly that's not intended. So without going to wingdings and giving them all sorts of symbols, you probably should use letters. And even then, there's an order attached to them. When mapping qualitative information to codes, consistent mapping is important. So this probably applies much more to analysis of qualitative answers. So a long answer, a variable or narrative answer, where you're doing some analysis of that to code into something. You need a coding scheme. So there it is about encoding. You have to think about how you're going to encode the answers you get, so that you can try and anticipate that when you're constructing your survey and put in the different scales and different types of indicate how you want the answers to come to you.